The largest act of civil disobedience in Stanford's history took place in the late 70s over the issue of apartheid. I think about at least 300 students were arrested in Old Union all at once.
The university did not want to disinvest, and that was one of the big struggles on campus.
I was the only person who was raising in the Senate. By the late 70s, certainly the 80s, what had begun as a few people complaining about South Africa had turned into a social movement.
I was living in Column Bay, which felt like the center of where things were happening. I know a lot of the larger organizers were there, and I did help organize some of the other anti-apartheid activities that went on. But the night of the arrests, I was just there in Old Union writing names on index cards so we could try and keep track of who was being arrested and making sure everybody could get back out.
As we started getting arrested, I was really scared about spending the night in jail, and just all sorts of awful thoughts went through my head. And so I figured I was going to get my 3 biggest friends to get arrested with me, because I noticed that we were being arrested in groups of 4. And people behind us asked, well, why are you guys lining up? And so I explained to them, and they laughed at me, and then they grouped in groups of 4 themselves. And then everybody behind them did the same thing. So, and in fact, in a news story later, that the journalist wrote that, I think he quoted the police. The police said, well, the demonstrators were very well behaved. They all lined up to get arrested.
Now, South Africa was a big issue in the 70s, but it sort of died. After a couple of years, it became the big issue again.
We were out there all spring working in the divestment movement, trying to get Stanford to divest. And it was kind of cool because it was really a multicultural, like the Rainbow Coalition was multicultural. Stanford out of South Africa was also, Metro was involved. I was involved with ASA. And Asian American Student Association, the Black Student Union, of course, was involved. Philosophically, the group was actually led by African students because Stanford has a lot of students from Africa, and they were really cool. They brought a kind of a gravity and a purpose to the whole movement.
There's a lot of stuff going on about that, including shanty towns erected in White Plaza to stimulate the shanty towns because of apartheid in South Africa. And so one of the strategies was to get Stanford to divest their interest in South Africa. So Jesse Jackson came, and I remember that there was a rally, and we all, marched in just in a peaceful, walking around in East Palo Alto in support of Rainbow Coalition and all of these other issues.
We went to a board meeting, and they were kind of not sure what we were going to do, the Stanford Board of Trustees, and they were meeting at the Hoover Institution, and they were parked all along that street right in front of the Hoover Institution. And we were over by Memod, and the police were looking at us, and we were looking at the police, and they knew we were going to do something, but they didn't know exactly what. And then we broke, and we ran, and we sat behind their cars. We talked with some of the trustees. It was kind of funny. Some of them were really annoyed because they had to get cabs to catch their planes. We released the cars 3 days later. So the Board of Trustees actually met with us.
There were a lot of people involved in the movement here at Stanford, and a lot of people involved in the demonstration that day, and a lot of people who got arrested. One of the reasons that the sit-in had such a viral effect around the country and on other campuses is because of the unexpected nature of what happened. I don't think anybody expected that there would be 300 students who would be willing to get arrested in 1977 over this issue. The big thing I take away from our whole experience is really about the process of social change. Well, what was the pathway of change that led from our activities contributing, not like causing, but contributing to the pace of change in South Africa? It was the fact that people's frame of reference about an issue is extremely important. Actions by institutions like divestment can change the frame of reference in a society. The campus divestment movement, it sparked a broader divestment movement and debate in the country and churches and pension funds. a whole change in the level of awareness and attitudes about this issue, which then in 1986 led to, a major change in Congress and the Anti-Apartheid Act of 1986, which was a sort of a seminal event in really cranking the pressure in South Africa. So it was a process of divestment leading to changes in people's frames of reference and attitudes across society, leading to political and policy change.